Hey everybody, welcome to Sama, Seattle Sacred Music and Art. It's been a minute since I got a chance to be back in the studio. That is my guest bedroom here not at KXP, and my home. I'm not going to give you the address, but a project that started during the pandemic, and obviously we're here now, continuing to interview and receive beautiful musical and artistic gifts from artists literally all over the world. Tech has done some amazing things. We're using various platforms. We've learned a lot through this process. And I am jazzed beyond belief to know that I can speak to anybody, anywhere in the world. Like today, I'm speaking to Yoni Battat from Jerusalem. Yoni, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Tell me about yourself. Often I'll do the introduction, but we just had a little conversation. Similarities, and I would just love to for you to tell me a little bit about who you are. You obviously, I first saw you during the Broadway performance of A Band's Visit, which Yoni just told me was the first time that Hebrew and Arabic were spoken at the same time on stage. The story's lovely, stunning, and if you've been watching and listening to me, whether on KEXP or watching on Sama, or on our YouTube channels, you know that I'm all about music bringing people together. And this was a perfect example of that. We cried, we laughed. It was a great, great show. But Yoni's work goes much deeper than that. So please, Yoni, introduce yourself.
So I'm here in Jerusalem. I guess I can start from there. Is that I don't live here. I'm here just for the year. I'm going to be studying Arabic this year. It's a continuation of this journey I've been on for over 10 years, really trying to reconnect with my Iraqi Jewish ancestry. I grew up in a Jewish community in New Haven, Connecticut area, with a really strong Israeli-Iraqi identity at home, but not really much outlet for that expression in my broader community, especially in the Jewish community. So that means when I was a kid, I started playing klezmer. I was a really good violinist from a young age. My parents started me when I was 4. And so I started playing klezmer. Wow. That was like the de facto option for a young musician who wants to have some Jewish something. Oh, let's put him in klezmer, which was great. I loved it. It became so important to me. Yeah. It was, it really actually feels like a core part of my voice as a musician is klezmer music in Yiddish. But I didn't have any outlets, or even know that I didn't have any outlets. You know, I didn't know what I didn't know then. For Arab music, for Arabic language, for a lot of that culture, even though I had pieces of it, and I had close relationships with my grandparents that were born in Baghdad and spoke Arabic, I didn't really have the musical outlet. So that wasn't until I was 16, anyways, that I was on a trip to Israel, and my grandfather bought me an oud for the first time, and he took me to a music school where they explain about maqam, the modal system of Arab music, and it blew my mind. It really opened up so many possibilities, just intellectually for me as a musician, as like a nerdy kid who wanted to like learn something new and enter into a new world of relating to music and constructing music. And also personally for me, it was so meaningful to be able to access my ancestry through music, which I hadn't been able to completely do yet. It took a while before it really caught on. I had the oud, I was noodling on it like, however I could, but I didn't really have much structure around it. And then like we were talking about before, at Brandeis, I was very lucky to have an opportunity to play in an Arab music ensemble, to study Arabic language. I also studied Yiddish, by the way, and I also had a klezmer band there. And I also felt like that was a very important part of my musical expression. But it was also my introduction to Arab music. And through that experience, through retreat in Mount Hadley, Massachusetts, run by Simone Shaheen, who's an amazing Palestinian oud and violin player, an amazing pedagogue as well. Through lessons I've been taking, through a year I spent studying in Jerusalem, through the band's visit and the contacts I made there, and my own work and album, I've been working through all of those pathways to rediscover the music of my Arab ancestors in a way that feels like I'm an outsider in a lot of ways. Even though it's my culture and it's my ancestry, I'm approaching it as an outsider. So that's sort of, I guess that's one version of my story, and this is the version I told today, and that's what also gave rise to the album that just was released.
That's a beautiful story, and I want to go dig a little deeper. But you presented us with some music. This was you guys recorded at the Boston Festival of New Jewish Music, and that happened. When did that happen?
It was in May, and it was the first time. So I recorded this album, Fragments, last year, 2021. I wrote the music between January and May, and recorded between May and July. But it wasn't until the following May that I actually had the chance to perform that music live for the first time. And I guess what you're about to see is an experiment, because everything we had done was in the studio, was in my head, and then finally for the first time I was like, oh, look at this amazing opportunity to be able to perform the music live. And so the fine folks at the Boston Festival of New Jewish Music gave us the opportunity to do that, which was really special.
Perfect. Boston. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. Okay, Yoni Battat, live at the Boston Festival of New Jewish Music. The new record is Fragments. Your first record, right?
It sure is, yeah. First solo record, anyway.
And first solo record. Mazel tov. Congratulations. Okay, check this out, and then we'll chat more with Yoni on Sama, Seattle Sacred Music and Art.
حدسي ملحوت نجينا يا ليل يا ليل.
Yoni Battat, thank you for that beautiful piece recorded in Boston. Who were the musicians?
So the musicians that you just heard, some are some are the same as the ones that recorded on the album. Some are different. I'm lucky to have a rich community in Boston of really talented players, a lot of whom are super experienced and masters in this style. So in this recording, you heard Benkisu Gokse on violin. You heard Jamal Sino on Kanun. You heard Fabio Pirozzolo and Julian Loida on percussion. James Hazelwood Dale on bass. I feel like I forgot someone. Who did I forget? I hope that's everyone. And there's singers.
Don't worry about it.
Alea Carno and Laura El Kaslasi, the vocalists. So those are amazing musicians that joined me for that particular live version.
Thank you for that. It was beautiful. Look forward to welcoming you in Seattle and the Pacific Northwest. Not just Seattle, because obviously there's a lot of towns here that would love to hear this music. And also they would love to hear this music outside of just the synagogue. Obviously there's a scene, you can do that, but I find that your music particularly will be really good to have a larger audience kind of experience this. And this leads me to my next question. You could have done klezmer and be happy with it. I love klezmer. I have a lot of great klezmer musician friends. They're quite content. What are you trying to, it feel like you were trying to, find your own path in this. Like your background is different. You didn't grow up in just one place. Your background is obviously, I read your bio, Polish as well as Iraqi. That's an interesting combination. You're presenting your culture, you're presenting your religion in a really interesting way. Why? You could have just been like, I'm good. Like, what are you trying to convey?
I have some goals in what I'm trying to convey, but what led me to do it was more personal than it was outward. It really was just following the curiosities that I had about my ancestry and about the sounds of my ancestry, and also just following something that I thought was really beautiful. I just following the threads of the possibilities of expression with microtonal music and how rich it is. That was really what first inspired me, and then I realized that it has a lot of power and potential to make change in the world, to claim Arab expression as Jewish expression. And I think in America especially, we so often conflate Jewishness with European Jewish, Ashkenazi. And I think this is such an amazing opportunity to bring Mizrahi folks, Arab Jews, Sephardic Jews, any Jew that has a different background than just what we're used to in America, bringing them into the forefront, from the margins into the center, and highlighting their voices. And I think that has a lot of potential and power in healing in the world. First of all, to just recognize the cultural and aesthetic connection between my ancestors, for example, Iraqi Jews, and like the mainstream Iraqi audience, and the songs they grew up with, and the soundtracks of their lives that ran through their heads. My ancestors and Palestinian ancestors and Egyptian ancestors, whether or not they're related to me, they had a similar experience, and illuminating those similarities, I think, has a lot of power. And also just giving permission for folks that grew up without access to their culture to exist in their fullness. A lot of the challenge I faced in this album was, how do I, as someone who's coming to this music as an outsider and as an adult and as a latecomer in my own understanding of it, who am I to represent that culture to a broader audience? And that held me back for a long time in my creative process. But eventually I began to realize that fragmentation in my identity, and that's why the album is called Fragments, but that element of fragmentation, the fact that I can never go to Iraq, as far as I'm concerned, to visit. The fact that I don't speak Arabic, didn't grow up speaking, the fact that I didn't pray growing up in Iraqi synagogue, the fact that I can't ask my ancestors what their experience is like, because many of them are not alive anymore. All of those layers, instead of thinking of them as a roadblock, I was able to think of them as an opportunity and a particular framing for my expression. And I think that's something that can be healing for other people too, as they listen to this, to say, oh, I'm incomplete, I'm imperfect, I don't have access to some of the things that some of the people around me have access to, but I still have worth. And that experience of fragmentation is a valid human experience that's beautiful in its own way.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Music is a really powerful way to transcend time, because when you were talking about not being able to go back to those countries, it reminded me of another artist that I just interviewed, Liraz, who was based in Israel, and her family is originally from Iran, and she just released she's working on a new record with Iranian musicians. This technology allows them to actually collaborate, underground a bit, but it's trying to recreate that connection that they had, because the current politics are current, but the history of Jews in Iran, Jews in Iraq, Jews in Algeria and Morocco is, hundreds, if not thousands of years old. And I remember reading stories of just recently how people miss their neighbors. People miss that connection that they had. Because if you grow up there and a family's been there for hundreds and hundreds of years, that's home. And, and obviously people are moving. You're seeing us right now, and obviously in Myanmar, obviously in Ukraine. Things aren't static. Things move back and forth, and that's just the politics of it. But music actually kind of transcends that, because it could take you there, can recreate those pavilion moments where people are gathering, people are eating together, people are working together, and give people a sense of what the future might be like. And as a musician that's decided to actually be in this space and create work in this space, what would you like to see the future be like? Obviously, it'd be great if you could play in Baghdad. That would be freaking amazing. It'd be great if Liraz suddenly got a chance to play in Tehran, or Shiraz. It'd be phenomenal, and not a dry eye in the place. But what would you like to see happen in this? Because now you're using a soft power, and you kind of started with that with the band's visit, where it was just, okay, wow, that works. That's really interesting. That transcends the current politics. And that's kind of your job. You kind of have to do that. If you were to create music, it'd be propaganda. It's like, here we are right now. It's like, okay, whatever, on your way. But what do you want to do? What do you want to see? What do you want to see with your stuff? Does that make sense, the question I'm trying to present?
Of course it does, yeah. Well, first of all, what I want to say is that what you mentioned, I think, is so beautiful and rich, and it reminds me of the situation of Jews in Baghdad. Almost all of the professional musicians in Baghdad until 1950 were Jewish, and I'm not exaggerating at all. Pretty much all, maybe with the exception of some of the lead vocalists, but almost all were Jewish. And it's really tragic what politics, what colonialism, what so many ugly powers have done to beautiful people making beautiful music together. And it's tragic that the musicians of the Jewish musicians of Baghdad are not there anymore. And there was actually a real dearth of music and culture when they all left in the 1950s. It was a sad desert, and that's not to say that the Iraqis are not capable of making good music. It just culturally wasn't done. The non-Jewish Iraqis I'm speaking of specifically. So in my mind, this is this maybe built up too big, but it's this heyday, this really special, amazing dialogue of not just Arabs in Iraq, but also across the Arab world, in Egypt, in Algeria, as you mentioned, in Syria, etc., all had the same music in their head, and also were listening to Jewish musicians and interacting with them. Even Salah al-Kuwaiti, one of the composers who I cover one of his songs on my album, he wrote some of the most pervasive and quintessential pieces of Arab pop music that are known across the world, and most people don't know that he was Jewish. So in my mind, this is like Baghdad was like the ultimate cosmopolitan place where this was happening. And what I want to do with it, I mean, I'm not trying to necessarily play in Baghdad, although that would be amazing one day. Even just to visit would be so meaningful to me. Anywhere in Iraq, really, what I see as ambitious and realistic is to be able to bring audiences together of non-Jewish Arabs and Jews, Arab Jews, everyone together, to be able to have a shared experience of beauty and to be able to recognize the commonalities that we have in our stories and also just bring musicians together just on a really basic level. So much of this album, I worked with musicians from Palestine and Jordan and Lebanon, Italy, bringing a lot of different people together. And I think music is a beautiful thing that does that. And doing that on stages where different populations can see themselves represented and see themselves interacting in a beautiful and productive way. That, to me, that feels like something that is doable.
בצאת ישראל ממצרים בית יעקב מעם לועז הייתה יהודה ישראל ממשלתה סוב לאחור ההרים רקדו כלים גבעות כבני צאן
I think it's the only thing that could really work in this way, because it opens up people's hearts in ways that nothing else that I know can. And I keep talking about this modality that happens where you suddenly, everybody in the audience falls in love with the musician, with the music, and also with each other. It just happens. So it's like suddenly you're just looking at each other and you're like, I love you. Something's going on there. And, cinema seems to be a little more close to that, but music just does that. Sometimes food will do that. Like you're in a restaurant, you're eating together, and just like it's so freaking good, you just get quiet. You just need to immerse that. Music seems to tap all of the chakras all at the same time. And as I've been doing this now for many, many years, I've nod my head to the power of that, because it can stop wars. It can get people to understand each other a bit more. Not all the time, obviously. The Ukraine-Russian situation has taught us that. It's like, human beings can be incredibly stupid and incredibly easy to manipulate. But then again, something happens and they open up a bit more, and and we're in it for the long game, and it's so up to musicians such as yourself to do this work. So I clap my hand to you. Well done for taking on this project and taking on this work. I want to ask you a quick question about Israel right now, and specifically with this. I've been lucky enough to work with a lot of Israeli artists, everybody from Ashkenazi artists all the way to Ethiopian artists. And I'm curious how this is being received in Israel right now, because I know certain cities, obviously Jerusalem, it's an ancient city, Tel Aviv, they're really multicultural cities, and things are in flux. Most people have this idea that it's like Tel Aviv is this, and I was trying to tell a few friends, it's like, no, dude, you have no idea. It's like, it's really incredibly diverse, and you've got all of these different populations that are there that are now finally creating and presenting their culture. You're talking about Sephardic, Mizrahi, Ethiopian to a small point. Is that well received? Is it like open arms, or is there pushback? Or, from a cultural perspective, are people open to it? Obviously, certain communities, they're not going to be open to it because it's, there's like, you have women singing and you're with women together. Obviously, there are certain religious processes that you have to just acknowledge. But in general, if you're looking at it, pull focus, you're looking at it, how is that being received right now? All of this, I think it's intoxicating, but how is it being received?
Well, first of all, I just got here 2 weeks ago, so I feel a strong connection to this place, and also I feel
you're no expert.
No, I'm no expert. I mean, but I do know, because I've lived here before, and my dad was born in Jerusalem, and I speak Hebrew fluently, and I feel a strong connection to this place, and also I'm learning to recognize that despite all of that, this is a foreign country to me. So it's not. It's even as much as I like to pretend I can hang. It's not in a lot of ways. There's vast cultural differences, which I'm learning to navigate, despite having spent a lot of time here. But I do have a sense that Israel has always been musically a very, very diverse place. And my dad, his taste in music was shaped by having grown up in Israel. His mom worked at the radio station, actually, in the Israeli Broadcasting Authority, the Arabic language radio station. His mom was a radio personality there, and so he grew up there. He listened to he had so many influences, and as a result, his musical taste is very, very eclectic. He listened to music in at least 10 or 15 different languages growing up. So like that alone I think there's a lot of appetite for that. And also, by the way, Israel being a society that is so young, and a culture that was kind of invented, within the last, 100 plus years. It's so hard to it's so hard to tell what's what. But it's a place of immigrants. So Palestinian people have been here, but most of the Jews, there's many Jews who have been here for tens of generations. Most of the Jews that are here in Israel are immigrants within the last 2 to 3 generations in their story. So just that in of itself makes it a place that's, I think, ripe for that kind of collaboration, and people are used to it and ready for it. What does it mean politically? That to me is like a different question, and is a really hard one to answer, because the politics here are very, very hard hard for me. And the people, even the ones who are the experts on Arabic music, their politics might surprise you. So just because there's an open arms for different cultures doesn't mean necessarily that it translates into a particular openness for coexistence.
Got it. That's great. That's good to know. Because often you feel like, oh, we all love the same stuff. We must be simpatico. It's like, no, not exactly. There's an academic way of doing this kind of stuff too that can sometimes be a little can overwhelm the art and the beauty of it. But the music is beautiful, and you're doing good work. And I'm glad that you're there. I'm glad that you're continuing this work. I look forward to welcoming you here, and to congratulations on the record. And I hope it does well. And I hope you continue fundamentally. Yoni,
thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
You too. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Be well. Hey, everybody. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe, please like, please share, so we can continue to present artists from all over the world. Even during COVID, we were doing this, and even after COVID. So be well, be safe, and I'll talk to you soon.
عن ضميري وصرت فرحتي وسروري والنفاس الألفاظ بافتراق فصار في خيبتي حضوري خبز كين اغداف mich nicht auf dem Oile der Bettler auf dem Yiddischen Beisoile wer der verliebt und noch dazu auf Yiddish Kirov Ma'aseinu Tov וימי חיינו הבל לפניך hoffnungslose auf der Erde schön ungetlich ist noch das, was muss vergehen und noch ach nur ist mir redig Kirov